Got a couple of people coming in the door. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of the American Society of Safety Engineers, welcome to this session, which is titled The 20-Foot Rule and Safety Leadership. My name is Adele Abrams, and I'm the moderator for this session. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to emphasize that your feedback is important, so please make sure to fill out your session evaluation form, drop it in the box back there that is provided as you leave. And also as a reminder, in case of an emergency, an audible or visual alarm will sound, and we ask you to evacuate the room in an orderly fashion. Proceed to the nearest exit. There's one there. There's one there. I don't know if there's any back there, but head for the one closest to you and get out of here until the all clear has sounded. Please note that smoking is not allowed in the conference or exposition spaces, and please place all your pagers and cell phones on stun. That means in the silent mode. Thank you for your attention. And it's my pleasure now to welcome our speaker for this session, who is Steve Boydston, CSP, ARM, ALCM. Any other alphabets we want to add on there? He is the mining practice specialty administrator, which I'm pleased to announce, and we are having our section meeting tonight. I'm sure he'll tell you about that and invite you all to join us if you are in the mining industry and are not already a member of the PS. He is, when he's not volunteering for ASSE, senior consultant with Det Norske Veritas, also known as DNV, in Centennial, Colorado. So, Steve, take it away.
Good afternoon. How are you all doing? Has anyone here heard me speak before? If you've heard me speak before, you know I open every presentation I've done for over 15 years by telling people about one of my mentors. My mentor is a 4-year-old boy, and he taught me the most important thing I've learned in my entire career as a health and safety professional. I was on my way to the airport one day, and I stopped at a barbecue for lunch. Had ribs. So when I got to the airport parking shuttle and got on the shuttle bus to go to the terminal, what do you think I had sticking out of the corner of my mouth?
Barbecue sauce.
Barbecue sauce? I'm not that big of a slob. I know how to wipe my face, but that's all right. I had a toothpick sticking out of the corner of my mouth. Gentleman and his 4-year-old son get on the bus next to me. And you know how 4-year-old boys are when they have some information they think you could use? Do they keep their mouth shut? He looked up at me and said, "Mister, you should take that toothpick out of your mouth." What did his father say? "Shh, leave that gentleman alone." Well, I said, "Sir, do you mind if I ask your son a question?" He said, "Go ahead." I said, "Young man, why should I take the toothpick out of my mouth?" And in a clear, confident voice, I can quote him to this day. "Because if we hit a bump or have an accident, that toothpick can get stuck in your throat and hurt you really bad." I'm a board-certified safety professional, a master's degree in safety management. Adele talked about some of the credentials I have. I have more. They don't fit on a business card anymore. Just leave them off. Nothing. All it says is I've been at it a long time, I've studied a lot and taken tests. I theoretically have knowledge. Who was the safety professional on the bus that day?
4-year-old.
And he hadn't started kindergarten yet. Because if there's one thing we can instill in every one of our organizations, it is giving employees more knowledge and having them develop the habit that when they see their coworkers having a brain cramp, doing something, putting themselves at risk or putting someone else at risk, they will intervene and say something. If we can get that into the workplaces, half the job's done. Would you agree with that? Yes. Okay, so let's get started. The 20-foot rule. You can see it right there. 20-foot rule is simply people within 20 feet of the problem will give you the best solution if you give them the opportunity. I first learned this rule doing an ergonomics project at a manufacturing plant in Corpus Christi, Texas. And what we did was we taught basic fundamentals of ergonomics to the manufacturing plant employees, the maintenance department, and some of the supervisors. Then we turned them loose to go out, and we gave them the afternoon. The next morning, they had to report on what they came up with. They come up with recommendations for tools. They came up with recommendations for redesign of some of their workstations where they were having a lot of problems. They had even went so far without any prodding to identify the correct postures, and they were going to implement coaching each other when people slipped into bad habits. I was blown away. I told the plant manager, I said, normally when you hire professional consultants in ergonomics, they come in and they'll take a week to come up with what your guys did in 4 hours. And he looked at me and he told me, well, we practice a 20-foot rule, and that's where I first learned it. Over my career, I found a lot of organizations. They don't call it that, but they have successfully implemented that. And we're going to talk about today. And we're also going to talk about some of the barriers where we get in our own way of implementing it. 3 R's, 20-foot process guiding principles. I learned these from my first employer. When I was a 12-year-old boy, I lived in the Missouri Ozarks, and my best friend and I were walking down the road next to an apple orchard. The apples were ripe for picking, and we were ripe for a little larceny. We did what 12-year-old boys do in the Ozarks. We hopped the fence and we started picking apples and stealing them. What we didn't know was the farmer was watching us. When he came out and started chasing us, my buddy got away. He jumped over the fence. Unfortunately for me, I slipped in the mud and got tangled up in the barbed wire. When the farmer came up to me, he untangled me from the barbed wire, and he had some choices to make. He could turn me over to the sheriff, and he had every right to do so. I was stealing from him. Worse, he could turn me over to my father, who I guarantee you that willow tree would have been missing a branch, and I would have been missing some skin by the end of the day. But instead, he looked at me, and he didn't look for what I was doing wrong. He looked for what I was doing right. And he told me, I was watching you and your friend, and you were doing a pretty good job picking my apples. So I'll tell you what, I'll pay you 25 cents a bushel to pick apples for me. Now go get your friend and come back Saturday morning. We worked that weekend picking apples for this gentleman. Every once in a while, he'd come out and check on us. He came out and he said, okay, guys, those apples that you're reaching too far for on the branches, shake the branch. If they don't fall, just leave them there. I don't want you to fall and break your neck. Your parents will kill me then. Came back later because he told us to take the apples with worms and bruises on them and throw them in a pile in the corner. Well, me and my buddy, when we were taking a break, decided to have some target practice. What were we doing? We were taking the apples and throwing them and smashing them. That was fun. Then he came out and he said, what are you guys doing with those apples? And we said, we're just having a little fun with the bad apples. He looked at us and he said, guys, there's no such thing as bad apples. The ones in the baskets, I'm going to take them to market. The ones with the worms and the bruises on them, I'm going to give them to the farmer down the road. He'll feed them to his hogs. And this will always stick in my mind. He said, there's no such thing as a bad apple. You can find good in anything if you look hard enough. And he said, I could probably find some good in you too if I tried. When we finished working for the gentleman, he counted the bushels, he gave us our money and sent us on our way. And he said, thank you, good job, boys. You know how important that reinforcement was from him, knowing what he could have done to me? But then it got scary the next Saturday at the hardware store. I'm in there with my dad, and the farmer walks up and grabs me by the shoulder. And he looks up and says, Charlie, did your son tell you what he did? And I'm going, oh no, it's coming now. And he said, your son and his friend worked for me all last weekend. They picked so many bushels of apples. You got a hard-working son right here, and you should be real proud of him. How is that setting a standard that you hold all the managers and supervisors you have ever worked for since then? That's where we have to get. So let's take a look. What he did was he treated us with respect, as all leaders should. Leaders who give respect. And I put on here, not wait for it to be earned. When you find leaders that say, you have to earn my respect, I see they're putting themselves on a pedestal. It's the ones that give respect until you lose it, or the ones that get the higher performing performers. Responsibility. One of the highest forms of responsibility is to give people work, give people responsibility, and when they finish it, provide them recognition. because recognition provides positive reinforcement, not just for winning, but for putting in an honest effort to do the work necessary to achieve the goal. When we apply the 20-foot process, one of the things we've got to make sure we do is the routine task people do every day. We've got to make sure our leaders get out and express appreciation for that. Okay. For leadership to maximize contributions of employees to the overall success of the organization, they have to provide them the keys. And what are the keys? We start with knowledge. Not just how to do the job, but why to do the job and why